Hey guys, more patch notes, and this is one that I'm certainly looking forward to. So let's just get right into it. This is version 1.22 released today, and there are quite a few adjustments that have been made. I've actually seen some of these in game beforehand, and they're overall in a really good spot. So let's just get right into it. Sword adjusted true and through by increasing the damage dealt when the attack is fully charged and by making the attack slightly faster. I have noticed it is, as it says, slightly faster. This is nice, but is not the most important thing that I felt needed to be fixed. I felt that True and Through's biggest issue was simply that its tracking was a little poor. I'll have to fully test it, but I still think the tracking issue is kind of the same. Devastating Rush, which is on the Odachi, just feels like a better version of True and Through. I'm happy that they sped it up a little bit, True and Through that is, but I think tracking needs to be improved. Adjusted the sword active skill Severing Spin by making it so that the player cannot be staggered. Basically, no hyper armor. And they've actually also sped it up. This is pretty good. I know that a lot of players have actually lobbied to have Severing Spin buffed, so this is really good as well. There's also one other thing I think they neglected to mention. So Blue Moon actually charges up a little faster, just very, very slightly faster. So you can get into Omni Slice with the full buff just a little sooner. Next up is Dual Swords. Dual Swords, Ultimate Sign of the Cross. Yeah, the damage needed a boost. It never really felt ultimate, so having more damage is good, and that's okay. Next up is Raijin. They boosted the damage on this. I guess Raijin kind of needed it. That was pretty important. I was kind of hoping for Mortal Flow to get some improvements as well, but that doesn't seem to be the case so far. Next up is decrease the distance the enemy is knocked back when they're hit by Water Sword. Now, if you try to use Water Sword against many enemies, they typically get pushed out, which kind of defeats the purpose. And most of the time, you just have to have trap an enemy in a corner. So this is good. Overall, good buffs. Next up is Spear. Triple Threat not only got a damage buff, but a key damage buff as well. So this can help players who are pressuring various humans use Triple Threat more often. Key damage from Resounding Lunge is increased as well, so that helps its utility. I know there are other criticisms of this skill, but this is still nice. Adjusted the Spear active skill Call the Herd by making it slightly faster. This was overall important because it was kind of one of those moves you felt like, hey, it just takes like 3 years. So having it slightly faster does help. One actual downside I noticed from this is that you have a little less airtime, which was something I was taking advantage of. But nonetheless, I think this was important. Next up is Axe. Axe Bear's Bane has a bigger shockwave, which I do think it will benefit from and was kind of needed, and duration in which enemies can be hit by the attack, while increasing key damage and break dealt by the attack. Damn, that's a solid buff to this skill. Increase the forward distance traveled and homing of the skill Rampage. Rampage is now like actually top tier. I was testing this out after using Spinning Slide, and what ended up happening is that you pretty much can nail the targets as you'd like. It's really good. Increase the damage and break dealt by Southpaw, so this makes it even more viable as a weapon, just getting a buff. Adjusted Spinning Slide by increasing the movement speed of the skill after being activated. So yeah, it does feel a little faster, and increase the duration of the effect, which decreases the charge time of Spinning Slide when combined with the skill that supports the triangle button being held. Basically, it's better, it feels faster, and yeah, it really pushes Axe into a really great spot, so I'm happy about that. Next up is Kusarigama. Adjusted the skill Water Drop by decreasing the time interval before and after the attack is performed, so you have less frames, animation starting frames, recovery frames, and they've just boosted it in general. It feels much more fluid, which is exactly what Kusarigama needed. Next up is increase the damage, key damage, and homing of the skill Whirlwind. So yeah, this is good. I mean, being able to hit enemies with the Kusarigama is one of its weaknesses, and now not only is it getting a power boost, but it's also getting a tracking boost. And for me, one of the bigger issues with most attacks in the game is simply that their tracking, or in this case their homing, is not the best, so this is good. And the same sort of logic applies to Crimson Flurry. It always feels bad when Crimson Flurry misses, and now this is greatly reduced. Let's get on to the next page, which does have additional balanced things. Adjusted the skill Undaunted by speeding up how fast the player can guard, along with decreasing the amount of ki that is lost when getting hit with an attack that cannot be reflected back. That is good. Undaunted, one of my biggest criticisms of it was simply just that it would take like 3 years to put into the ground. So it's sped up, which makes it better, at least a much more interesting option now. Speaking of other options for the Odachi slots and high stance, you've got Thunderbolt. So you take less damage basically while you're in the stance using the skill, and now when you get the extra condition where you get hit and whatnot, its power level is boosted. Break damage, ki damage, and damage dealt are all going up. In addition, the startup time for the attack and the possible time to perform a ki pulse were decreased. So again, overall a nice speed up and power boost to a new skill, which I am happy for. I was kind of hoping for a range increase when you just aren't able to nail it, but by and large, these are quite good. Next up is Tonfa, which I was seeing on Reddit. It was called, what was it? The I don't even remember, Royal Rod or something silly like that. Or no, Rotary Rod. Whatever, it's a dumb joke aside. Key damage and damage dealt by Storm of Strikes. I think now Storm of Strikes will be in a much better position, something that you may want to try. Storm of Strikes usually got dismissed because its power level was so low. I still feel it's a great ability even without these things, simply because there is a nice flanking ability, and the ability to Demon Dance right out of it is pretty cool. Also, Elemental accumulation now for skills like Wild Lions has been buffed, which is really good. So if you want to use Arcanas or each of the 3 stances, and have like a fire, water, and a lightning one, now you can more likely inflict elements using Wild Lions, which is good. Next up is Hatchets. So I actually tested out Hatchets, and overall I'm just going to say they're amazing things that they've done to this weapon. So Deadly Spiral damage boost, fine. Increase the homing of Wild Surge and Wild Surge 2. This is noticeable. If you tried using Wild Surge or Wild Surge 2, you'd probably just miss your target, especially with Wild Surge 2, so it felt kind of hard to use. Now it is noticeably better, and man, it's so good. I love using Wild Surge and Wild Surge 2. Such an important ability that just changes how you approach the hatchets. Next up is Spinning Crab. Damage dealt went up, and it's easier to hit with. Yeah, the tracking is pretty much like A tier now. Decrease the charge time for Grease Lightning. Really? Oh man, I think I talked about that back in like the beta, but yeah, I mean, now you've got a power move that you can throw out a lot more quickly. And I've noticed it for Boulder Breaker as well. I can't remember the names. I think Boulder Breaker is the one where you throw away the hatchets and then you move back, but they've made it so that the whole sheathing animation has just been truncated a bit, and it's most noticeable with Boulder Breaker. Decrease the time it takes to transition to active skills for skills that go from a sheathed state to an unsheathed state. Yep, and this kind of plays into just what I was talking about. Next up is Switchglaive. Switchglaive also got a bunch of boosts too. Damage and speed of the attack Fleeting Edge. This is noticeable. So Fleeting Edge is that ability where you kind of just like circle around a target and you do a bunch of hits, and you're kind of like, what's the point of this skill? It takes like 3 years to activate. It's like, yeah, now it's faster and it's stronger. So it's an interesting choice. Damage for Windswept has gone up. And then adjusted Cyclone 2 by balancing the slash and throw damage. Okay, I mean, cool, I guess. There's probably some weird interaction going on there. Okay, next up is Arc of Chaos. By making the enemy move closer to the player when the thrown Switchglaive returns back to the player. I have to say this makes it feel so good because it fits the theme, man. It is so awesome, and I'm really happy about it. I don't know how else to put it. It's just so good. Next up is they adjusted Cyclone, Kibosh Kicker, and Arc of Chaos by shortening the time in which a key pulse can be performed, so quicker recovery, and decreasing the amount of time they can return after the recovery period. It feels faster. It's just shorter overall frames, and then even the recovery frames just feel better. It just makes the weapon so much more fluid. Next up is decreased the time it takes to transition to active skills for skills that go from a sheath state to unsheathed state. Basically, your sheaths are going to be faster. And so this makes abilities like Thin Air a lot better. So it's a noticeable buff, and I'm very happy about that. Next is, so there's no split step actually. I don't know what split step really needs in terms of adjustments. I'll probably think about that later and talk about it then in like a podcast. But let's see with Fists. Increase the amount of anima gained from the Fist active skill Wolf Claw. Now, one of the weaknesses of Fist in general, it's not really that much of a weakness given how powerful Fist is, but Wolf Claw certainly being the de facto anima generator, it getting more anima, I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. So let's see what's on the next page. Now, these are other adjustments as well. They have now increased the plus values of equipment up to 120, so this is a big difference. You get 20 extra plus levels, and that's pretty sick. And then the plus value correction of dropped equipment for Blessings of the Departed has had the upper value increased as well. So it's a nice rebalancing sort of system. And naturally, the number of gems or whatever has been increased, which can't complain about that either. Spectral Salve can now be stored in the storehouse and are automatically replenished. Thank God. After leaving the underworld, all are lost. Oh, wait, what? Okay. Oh, I see. So you basically have to reobtain it, but it's not like you were capped at 9 and you could never like actually have reserves while you were in the underworld. Okay. Bosses in the underworld now drop Dream of the Nioh scrolls. Great, thank you. Defeating Transcendence enemies now has an increased chance to drop rate for boss picture scrolls. That is cool as well. So nice. Dream of the Nioh adjustments, the plus values have been increased and mission difficulty has been adjusted to accommodate this. I think one of the things that some people have been saying is that Dream of the Nioh felt kind of easier, so having some sort of rebalance so things scale well is certainly something I'd like. Also, in the Eye of the Beholder, so the Otakimara mission, once it's been cleared, player will now receive Gems of the Departed as a reward. In the case that this mission has already been cleared by the player, this can be obtained by the starting point screen after the update has been applied. Nice. So some retroactive rewards if you have already binged through Dream of the Nioh and you get the new currency that you use in the underworld. That is good. Temper adjustments. This is actually really cool. After unlocking Dream of the Nioh, some of the possible special effects when tempering ethereal armor will be of a higher value than before. Cool. I've also seen that you can now temper some effects like melee key damage when I didn't think they'd allow that on various different equipment pieces. I know Ocean Machine has actually incorporated this into his Nioh Bible guide, so definitely do take a look to see what updates we have tracked. Next up, other adjustments. The chance that special effects, purity, and corruption will be added to a weapon has been adjusted for each type. Apparently it's an increase. And they've also increased the drop rate for ethereal soul cores. I was kind of hoping we could temper purity and corruption ourselves, but maybe that's something they'll consider down the pipeline. Who knows? Alright, and then last page. Bug fixes. Fixed bugs where, certain attacks would not activate with the skill Heron Kick and Kibosh Kicker. So I know there were some players who had issues with the grapples and whatnot, just wouldn't work for whatever reason, even when they were like out of key. It was just weird. So I guess they've tried to address that, and we'll see if that's actually the case. Fixed a bug where active skills derived from quick attack or strong attacks with Tonfas would cause specific timing inputs to not register. I haven't noticed this, but maybe it'll feel much smoother now, which is a good thing. That's awesome. Next up, fixed a bug where Rakshasa, so that's the Switchglaive anima like buff thing or whatever, would activate when going from sheath to unsheath even when they were not holding down a button where it was set. So I guess this prevents unintentional activations or perhaps a quick little exploit to activate it without actually performing the skill itself, which I think is totally reasonable. Next up is fixed a bug in which the skill Fatal Thrust would not grapple, which is kind of crummy. If you are going to deplete an enemy, you want to have the grapple. That's what the skill says, so thank you for fixing that. There was a bug that caused a player to fall through the ground and die when using Call the Herd. I had this issue. If you've seen one of my recent VODs, that is exactly what happened. I attempted to Call the Herd as a finisher against Gozuki, and then I fell through the world. And it caught me by surprise. So that one specifically applies to me. Next up is fixed a bug that would cause the charge attack to not activate during Yokai Shift Phantom form. That is strange. I haven't experienced that, but that's good. Fixed a bug that would prevent items from being emitted from Thought Amrita in certain levels of the underworld. Okay, seems like it's necessary. Fixed a bug that would cause an application error to occur when dying in the Bewitching Tower boss area on Dream of the Wise. Yikes. Well, that seemed like an important one. Okay, then let's see. Fixed a bug in the submission against all comers where using the travel amulet and then immediately praying at a shrine would cause the shrine menu options to not appear, causing the player to be unable to proceed. That's pretty good too. Alright, fixed a bug where the player would die a second time after returning directly to the shrine after dying. I actually think this is a low-key buff to speedrunners because that could otherwise be a problem if you have that happen. I've seen a few players in which you just like died when you got back to the shrine. It was kind of weird. But yeah, so that's good. And then last but not least, fixed a bug that caused the buttons in the description for the Tonfa active skill Demon Fang to not be properly displayed. So it was weird. You know, I know in my new skills video I mentioned that, hey, this input is, why is it saying L1? It should be triangle. Well, it seems like there was a bug, and now that they have rectified that, hopefully there won't be confusion for the languages that were affected. Now, overall, I am very happy about this patch. I think a lot of the adjustments make certain weapons that much more appealing. I hope to see more, and even though I have doubts that they'll introduce more content in terms of like new skills and whatnot, it would be really nice if they did that. But even despite that, I'm really happy with this patch. Let me know what you guys think, and yeah, thanks for watching. I will see everyone next time. Take care and peace out.